let's imagine that that was literally the first interaction when the child walked through the door. And in that one gesture and in that one statement, in less than 30 seconds, the child just handed you their world.
They offered their experience.
In one statement, in one gesture. And as therapists, do we have the courage to feel the possibility of that and to be open and receptive and curious about that, and then use that curiosity to inform us about where to go next?
Eyesight and everything at the bottom.
Became a mighty battle cat, and I became He-Man.
Can I hide with you?
Oh, you want to know if you can hide with me or if I can hide with you? You choose. Would you like to hide together?
You hide with me.
Now we're under here.
28, 29, 30. Ready or not, here I come. And you.
Well, hey, Lisa, thank you so much for being part of our 4th annual Innovative Child Therapy Symposium. I just love everything that you do. Every chance that I get to learn from you, I take it. I've read your Aggression and Play Therapy book more times than I can count. I've taken the Synergetic Play Therapy training. I've taken your business courses. I've listened to your podcast. I've watched your YouTube videos. I just really, really feel like you're a mentor to me. In a recent training, you said people can be mentors without even knowing that they're mentors. I feel like you're my mentor, my teacher, and somebody that's just an important part of not only my professional life. I've grown personally since I've known you. So specifically, this one topic that we're going to talk about today has been a big deal. Hey, but before we get started, let me have you introduce yourself. Tell people who you are and what you do.
Awesome. Well, first of all, Jackie, thank you so much for the invitation to be a part of this really extraordinary offering that you are now on your 4th year. So can I just take a moment and celebrate you? Congratulations. This is a huge gift that you bring to all of us. So everyone, my name is Lisa Dion. I am the creator of Synergetic Play Therapy. I'm also the president of the Synergetic Play Therapy Institute. I love to teach. That's what I love to do. I love to teach. I love to develop clinicians. I love to support clinicians on their journey. I'm also the co-founder of the Synergetic Education Institute, which is our attempt at impacting the world of teachers and administrators. And I'm also a mama of an almost 17-year-old, which blows my mind. And I'm just super grateful to be here.
Oh my goodness, all those things. And you're amazing at every one of them. And I just recently found out in the last training of yours I went to that things didn't come magically easy to you. So you're like the rest of us that has life struggles too, and you help us all with our struggles along the way.
Yeah.
So, okay. So
Okay.
when I was when I took that Synergetic Play Therapy introduction course, the part where you talked about the setup and the offering, I paused it and I just rewound it and watched it over. I was like, whoa, it did kind of blow my mind. I was like, that's the way that it works. And you told a story that went along with it, and that shifted things for me. That shifted the way that I show up, like in my personal life, with my relationships with my family and friends. It shifted the way that I do therapy. It shifted the way that I do EMDR therapy with young children, especially. And it made it to where things that were slow to work or maybe didn't work at all, it started to see results. So I'd love to talk about that.
Yeah. So what you're referring to is one of the tenets from Synergetic Play Therapy that says that the child will set both the toys and the therapist up to feel, that's the key word, to feel what it feels like to be the child. And so I'm just going to start to expand that out a little bit. So as play therapists, we understand that the child is using the play and they're projecting their inner world onto the toys, and they're recreating, what's going on inside of them, outside of themselves, so that they can look at it, see it, interact with their experience in a new way. It's like, right, that's like play therapy 101, right? And why we love the toys so much. In synergetic play therapy, we just go one step further to recognize that the therapist is also part of that equation, that it's not just the toys that are receiving the projection, but the therapist is also part of that projective experience. So we tend to, go, oh, we call it the setup. I actually call it the offering. That's actually the language that I've been using over the last many years a bit more, because sometimes when people hear the word setup, it sounds like a manipulative kind of a process, like, oh, I set you up, whatever. And it's like, no, there's actually nothing manipulative about this whole process. It's actually one of the innate ways that we share information with each other about how we're doing. And it's one of the fundamental ways that we communicate with each other. And we'll get into that a little bit more too. But from this perspective, I really perceive that it's an offering. So Jackie, if I'm spending time with you, and through the words that you use, through your behaviors, whether you make eye contact with me or not, the way you're interacting with me or not, I mean, if all of that is offering me a felt sense that is potentially an insight into what might be going on with you, that is just a gift, just like period. Because it puts me in a place of curiosity about what might be going on with you, Jackie. And so that's kind of the gist of it, is that we're walking through the world. So it's not just children in the playroom, right? We're walking through the world, really offering to other individuals an opportunity to feel what it feels like to be us. And if an individual understands this is what's going on, and they're receptive to this as a possibility, and they're willing to feel their own shifts and activation in their body, to become curious about what might be arising in the moment, it's a game changer. And that's like literally the language. When this started to come together for me, and it did start to come together for me first clinically, and then it was like, wait a second, this is happening in my relationship as a parent, and this is happening with my friends, and this is happening with my colleagues, and wow, this is actually happening in every interaction that I'm experiencing. It really just fundamentally shifted the way that I view behaviors and the way that I hold people, because everything then turns into a possibility of feeling what it might feel like to be another. And that's just like an open door to empathy and being with and curiosity. So that's the gist. So wherever you'd like to go from there, Jackie.
It is incredible. And I love that you pointed out that it's not like manipulative. It's not even really intentional. It's something that just happened. So I like the offering as well. I'll start referring to it as that. And it happens within like the parent consultations, or with especially in like the school meetings, when we go to the IP or the 504 meetings, you could feel the vibe in the room. It's incredible. I liked when you showed a demonstration of a child with blocks, and it was fascinating. I mean, as child therapists doing play therapy, or play therapists, we'll track and just kind of follow their moves. We're with them, but this was like with them on a different level. As my first experience of seeing it, the blocks were getting ready to fall. They were teetering, and you're like, oh, they're gonna fall. And you were regulating yourself. And the kid was like with you and really telling you, like, oh, they're almost like it was very metaphorical to what was happening in that
Yeah.
child's life. It just took it to a way greater level than where you could go otherwise.
Yeah, so let me give some examples so that we take it from abstract concept. So let me give some like really basic examples that can that are common in the playroom, and I think it's important that that as I'm giving these examples that we recognize that there's a context,
Yeah.
there's information that we're not privy to as something arises, an exchange arises in a moment. So these are just possibilities. It doesn't mean like if a kid does this, that this is what the offering is, right? These are just places of possibility and places of curiosity. But let's imagine that a child walks into the playroom and they look at you and well, actually, let me just do so Jackie, you're going to be my therapist here, and I'm going to be the kid, right? And so I walk into the playroom and I look around at your playroom with this look of like disgust on my face, like just this utter look of disgust, like ugh, like this, like your toys are so dumb, like your room is stupid, right? Kind of a look. And then maybe I look at you and I say something like, who picked out your clothes? Okay. Right. So let's just pause, because kids have like that, right? Sometimes kids will come in and right.
Or they like really do say those things.
They do, right? Okay, so let's pause for a second. Now, if we don't tap into this possibility of an offering, what can arise in us, because our own protective defenses come up, is like, what a mean kid.
Yeah.
Right. And it becomes about the like, what a mean kid, like what a brat. This is where we can like label the kid, or how rude, or you can't talk to me like that, or right, there's this wall that can go up because it hurts, right? We just took it personally. It doesn't feel really good. But if we pause for a second, we go, okay, hold on a second. The conversation has begun, right? The conversation has begun. This is part of the child's brilliant way of helping us feel what it might feel like to be this child. So can we have a courageous moment of pausing, taking a breath, and actually just feeling, what did that feel like? Gosh, it feels like there's something wrong with me. It feels like I'm not good enough, right? Because that's a possibility of what might have happened for you, Jackie, in that moment. And I don't know if I don't want to put words in your mouth, but is that kind of the felt sense that arose in you when I was like, making fun of your room and then offering
Which
you
is
that?
interesting. That's a role play, and we're definitely not, playing out real stuff. And I still felt the feelings.
You
I
still
was
felt
like,
that.
what the? I like my playroom come up in my mind, and I was like, well, these toys I like crafted together. I felt that defense just even hearing it, and it was a role play. So yeah,
Exactly.
and I could
Yeah.
see if it was like a real situation, I'd get mad, get maybe even like you can't talk to me like that.
Totally. And underneath that, the hurt is, and again, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but was the hurt somewhere along the lines of like, there's something wrong with me, or not good enough, or to tap into something there?
Mm-hmm. With like
Right.
sinking feeling in my
The
chest.
sinking feeling. Okay, so then we pause and we hold that as a possibility of, might this be what it feels like to be the child? Is this a child that doesn't feel good enough? Is this a child that feels like there's something wrong with them? Is this a child that's walking through the world feeling a little deflated or sunken, as you were saying, in some way? Is this a child that protects with a defensive posture? All these things. And it's simply a place of curiosity. And what I have found is that the more attuned and present the therapist is, the more spot on it is every single time.
Mm.
And I think that's just such a beautiful piece, because let's imagine that was literally the first interaction when the child walked through the door. And in that one gesture and in that one statement, in less than 30 seconds, the child just handed you their world.
They offered their experience.
In one statement, in one gesture. And as therapists, do we have the courage to feel the possibility of that and to be open and receptive and curious about that, and then use that curiosity to inform us about where to go next therapeutically, so that we can be with and co-regulate through, instead of defend against, boundary up against, shut down, contain, compartmentalize, because we got hurt. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes. What a game changer. Just thinking of like, you could get defensive, shut them down. That would continue to be like a relationship rupture. And where are you going to go from there? Or you could take it as information, and there the therapy has begun. And it's really beautiful experience.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that piece that we just talked about, I didn't go into what would you do with it, because that piece is happening in every single play therapy model. So even there, it's like, okay, we pause now in this place of curiosity, and then we get to hold that as our own unique selves clinically, because then what would you do with that information than if you were a child-centered play therapist? And what would you do with that information if you were a Gestalt play therapist? And what would you do with that information if you were a synergetic play therapist or an Adlerian play therapist? Because there's room for every play therapy model in the how do I say that? Like, this is just information, and then we can use that information and move it into our own unique way that we all do play therapy. So we talk about it as a tenet in synergetic play therapy, but what you do with it is, I mean, that's unique to every play therapist.
It does seem like a way of being, like not even like limited to what I'm choosing to do or what not to do. Even up in the grocery store when the cashier's irritated.
Yeah.
There's this interaction that you could either get upset by it, or you could just take it in as she's having a really hard day.
Yeah. It's been I'll name this because I know that there are probably many people watching this who are also in the role of parent or caregiver too. I'm just going to put that out there. This is also a game changer in the parent caregiver child dynamic as well. My daughter, when she's overwhelmed or stressed out, her energy shifts and changes, of course, right? Because her nervous system's activated. She's more sympathetically aroused. Her energy is more like, it's more pressurized. And when she interacts with me, I literally feel like this, like, like I feel caught in the pressure storm. My apologies, I will cough there. I feel caught in the pressure storm. And again, if I can take a moment and feel, oh my gosh, like I feel pressure. I feel like, I'm feeling suffocated in this energy. It's just another level of insight into what's going on with my child that can put me in a place of curiosity as a parent of what might be most helpful for her right now. Does she need space? Does she need me to just walk over and give her a hug? Does she need me to slip her a banana because maybe she's a little hangry right now, and that's contributing to. But when we allow ourselves to get curious about the offering, what I've noticed is that place of curiosity, like the simple act of becoming curious, is a ventral vagal response. Just a simple act, that right? And in the midst of that challenging activation, because you're going to feel it when you're with someone, I think that's something too for everyone to understand. This setup or the offering is unavoidable. It's not like we get to choose whether or not we want to feel it. Our nervous systems are saying hello to each other. So you're going to feel it whether you want to or not. The question is, are you going to be honest about the fact that you're feeling it? And are you willing to do something with the experience that's arising in you? But this is just happening. just happening. Our nervous systems are saying hi to each other. There's resonant circuits, I mean, like the mirror neuron system's firing. Like this part, the setup and offering is unavoidable. But if I can become curious about my experience when I'm with you, that's like more fundamentally my experience, what arises in me in a moment when I'm having an interaction with you, that place of curiosity accesses ventral, which brings a neuroception of safety into my system in the midst of the challenge, in the midst of the activation, in the midst of the pressure, blah, blah, blah. And that gives me a little bit of room to access my prefrontal cortex, right? It bring that little bit of room, and that little bit of neuroception that I bring into the system creates a little bit more space for me to have insight into what's needed, that allows me now to respond instead of react. And it's that space that's so key, right? Just that little bit of space, a little place of curiosity.
Goodness, I'm thinking so many things. Thinking about like regulation, even amidst like a stressful time, you could be regulated because you have that regulated other, that ventral vagal. But I think about like Dr. Viktor Frankl, in Man's Search for Meaning, he quoted Friedrich Nietzsche, said, no, it might have been Dr. Frankl himself. Between the stimulus and the response, there's a space.
There's a space.
In that space, there's freedom. It sounds like that's the space you're talking
That's exactly
about.
what I'm talking about. That space is where all possibility exists, and it's that space where the potential for the new neural wiring can occur, the space for the pattern interrupt to occur, the space for change, right? New possibility in that space. So the recognition of the offering creates that space, just that little space of curiosity of, who is this person in front of me? Might this be what their experience is like? Oh my goodness. And if it is, wow. Now, how can I connect my heart with this child? Even though they've got a fistful of sand and it looks like they're about to throw it at me, right? How can I connect my heart in the moment and recognize, wow, this child right now is offering me an opportunity to feel scared, to wonder in this moment if something bad's going to happen, to potentially feel a shock. And how might that be relevant to what that child was experiencing in their life? Oh, the trauma that they're here for came out of nowhere. Oh, it was a shock. Oh, it felt overwhelming. It felt like they couldn't protect. What a beautiful way, by simply this child picking up a handful of sand and threatening to throw it. That one gesture, again, opening up a whole possibility of understanding of what their trauma might have felt like, for them. And can I hold that and be with that with the child in the moment?
Oh, so deep. So it seems like another way of thinking about it, like when I conceptualize it in my head, it's like they're offering us a chance to be them for a little bit, to really share beyond words. It's interesting you should use that example, Lisa. There was I think
Did that just happen to you, Jackie? No.
well, this was ironically right before I read the Aggression and Play Therapy book. And the child, wow, it's bringing back the feelings. I literally, my prefrontal cortex went off, right, because this was in a deep way. This was before I knew this. Grabbed the sand, 4-year-old grabbed the sand and threw it in my face. And then I had one eye open and I felt my heart beating. And first thing in my mind, I was like, I'm thinking to myself, I'm going to call mommy. Mommy's going to come. And I took a deep breath. I was like, oh, you just threw sand in my face. And I was like really overwhelmed. And then I said, let me have a minute. And then the child was apologetic and, oh, I'm sorry, Miss Jackie. I was like, okay. And we were both like trying to get our footing. This was before I read your book. I would respond differently. And of course, I've taken your training now. But the mom, oh my goodness, I spoke with her afterwards and she said, I am so glad that you could see him today. Do you know somebody threw sand in his face at preschool? And I was like, I know.
You're like, I know.
tell you, I was like, kinda. And it was exactly what you're explaining. Before I understood what was happening, um,
Wow.
it was pretty powerful. I could have definitely done a million things differently that would have been more helpful. Now I've taken your training. I feel like, it would have shifted the way I responded and several different things. But the communication was there,
Yeah.
and he didn't even like do it like out of spite. It just happened, and he felt
Yeah.
really bad about it afterwards. He
Yeah.
was apologetic as a young child. That's the power
So
of this.
that is an amazing example, and it's such a beautiful, um, if we didn't understand the offering, like, oh my gosh, this kid just threw sand and like that's not okay.
Yeah.
But to then go, oh my gosh, what a wise being. That child instinctively, not even consciously, put you in the position and offered you a feeling of what it felt like to be that child or what that child just went through, because the child wanted to know how you would respond to it, right? Wanted you to enter their world, wanted to be co-regulated, through that experience. And so it takes the labeling from bad child who throws sand to wise child who wants to be known.
Oh, and then you could respond with compassion, empathy, with regulation. Like I could have
Totally,
regulated myself
totally.
and could have been a whole experience.
Totally. And listeners, as we're saying this, it doesn't mean that you don't ever set a boundary. Let's just be clear about that, right? Boundaries obviously are important. And the way the boundary is set, in my experience, is different when we understand what's happening from the offering. What comes out of us from the boundary is a response instead of a reaction, because oftentimes boundary setting can be a reactive experience in the playroom because we're afraid or we're not understanding what's going on, again, which is different than, okay, I get what's happening here, and how do I acknowledge and redirect this in a way where I can continue to co-regulate the child, and the child is able to continue to express what they need to express, and and the therapist gets to still stay in their own ventral vagal response in the process.
That was a big aha moment when I read your book, was the whole talk about boundaries, because if I did think of it as more of like, oh, the sand's not for throwing, if you choose to throw the sand, then more of like emergency, let's put on the brake and stop this whatever's happening.
Yeah,
But in your book you talk about like it's really about the therapist, and you even had like an example in there about you had to protect your belly when you were pregnant, and
absolutely.
so you had to set a different boundary because you had to have one arm free. You couldn't be totally handcuffed.
Right.
Um, which those that watch are probably like handcuffed, but all
Yeah. Yeah, I did. I had a kid in our play that wanted to handcuff me to a door and have a sword fight at the same time, but I was pregnant, and it was I couldn't maintain a neuroception of safety in that, because there was no way that I could protect my belly, and therefore there was no way I could be present with a child because my own system was too heightened in activation, because I didn't feel safe, and I didn't feel that, like, well, I felt safe, but I didn't feel that my baby was safe. So it was a great place to set a boundary, and to just acknowledge and redirect and shift the play in a way where we just expressed it and explored it in a different way where I could maintain that neuroception of safety as the clinician. So yes, so that's what we're talking about, listeners. You're like, handcuffs.
cuffs in therapy. What kind of therapy? That
Yeah.
was a big aha moment about the boundaries, about how it's what we can still stay, how we can stay regulated and be that. A term that I got from you, and I think you said it came from like your readings of Alan Shore, was external regulator.
Yeah.
I learned a lot about like external regulation, then co-regulation, and then there could be self-regulation if they've experienced it. So you just love to use the word regulation as like it encompasses all of it.
All of it, all parts. Yeah.
So good, so good.
Yeah.
Lisa, we're almost out of time, but I want to make sure people know where to go, whether they want to like get the training in synergetic play therapy, or what's the school version called?
Synergetic Education Institute.
Okay. And is there a training with that as well? Well, I guess apparently it's an education. And then you have this business of therapy that I went
Sure.
to, that recent training.
Do you want me just to talk through a couple of different things?
Yes, that would be great.
So Jackie's been referencing the book Aggression in Play Therapy, a Neurobiological Approach for Integrating Intensity. That's available in English, Spanish. It's also audio as well, so that's available.
And you read it yourself, right? You're
Yeah, I'm the reader. Then that was really fun. Yeah. Two places where you can go to learn more: the Synergetic Play Therapy Institute or the Synergetic Education Institute. If you're interested in Synergetic Play Therapy training, we do have our Introduction to Synergetic Play Therapy course that runs 3 times a year. It's an online 6-month program. It's a quite a unique program in that it's part live, part videos you get to watch on your own, and you also get consultation in group every step of the way. So it's really a multifaceted type of a learning experience. And we also have, I don't even know how many videos are out there on YouTube. So if you're like, I just want to explore, but I don't want to buy anything, which I totally respect, go binge on YouTube videos, or my podcast, which is the Lessons from the Playroom podcast. We have so many free resources and so much material out there for clinicians. So take advantage of everything that we have that is that's free. So those are some things that listeners can tap into.
You've changed the world. Just a random thought as you're saying that, I'm thinking about the training that I took with the it was online. You didn't know I took it. It was like, but the Santra's regulation.
Oh,
Oh my goodness, that was something that I use like throughout my work, is being able to use this thing.
How to turn your sand tray into a regulation tool. Yeah, such a fun concept.
It was just an hour, and it was very, very profound.
Cool. I'll mention one more that you mentioned too. I said at the very beginning, I love to develop therapists, and part of what I feel like is part of helping develop therapists is also developing their dreams. And so I also have the Business of Therapy course, which Jackie, you just attended, which is a 2.5-day course, which is where I teach you all the business stuff that is needed to be able to get after the dream. Because as therapists, most of us do not have business training in our background, and that's a real heart inspiration of mine, is to help launch the dreams inside of therapists too.
I have to say, though, it's more than a business training. I felt like I had therapy. I felt like I had coaching. I made friends. It was amazing. I will, like, literally, as soon as I see the link when the next one is posted, I'm going to sign up for it. I'm going to go every single year. I grew in so many ways.
Second week in November again.
Yeah, and it was kind of cold, which I'm not a fan of. It was worth every bit of it. I loved it. The fancy hotel and all. And you gave the evening speech so eloquently. All right, Lisa, thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone who taken the time to listen and be part of this symposium. Thank you, Jackie, again, for putting this together. And
became a mighty
well, everyone. Many good wishes.
And I became He-Man.
Oh, can I hide with you?
Oh, you want to know if you can hide with me or if I can hide with you. You choose. Would you like to hide together?
You hide with me.
Now we're under here.
28, 29, 30. Ready or not, here I come. Found you.